All right. Thanks everybody for coming tonight and for being there despite the bad weather here. So tonight I'm going to talk about profiling PHP application everywhere, all the time. My name is Marc. I work at Blackfire. I've been working there since a long time. If you want to chat afterward, if you have any profiling question or whatever, we will have a QA session at the end of this talk. And if you want to talk to me after that, just come forward. Thank you. The big question here is, what is profiling? Do you use a profiler in your daily life? Yeah, 1, 2, all right. So I love to read Wikipedia, and I think that reading definitions on Wikipedia is quite good. And starting a talk with the definition helps to understand what we talk about. So the profiling is about dynamic program analysis, and this is in contrast to static program analysis. Dynamic means that you run an instrumentation on your code that is being executed, whereas on static program analysis, you just read the source code without any runtime. So during profiling, we can measure, for example, the space used by the program, meaning the memory. We can instrument any resources consumption on the computer, such as network or time that a function takes to execute. I mean, the possibilities are really infinite. I'm sorry, I'm having some problem with the mic. So yeah, this is interesting because profiling means that when you run that on an application, you can really get some low-level data about it. You can know what function call, which function call another one. And this is something that you cannot have with an APM, which does only tracing, for example. So these tools are really complementary. The APM means that you have real-time data on your application, whereas with a profiler, you have really deep data with your currently running application. When I talk about everywhere, I talk about the different state of the code that you have on your different systems. For example, on your production system, you will have the most stable part of your code. On your staging infrastructure, you will have some testing features or some beta features. So the state of the code are very, very different. And you will have also a lot of different environments. For example, on each engineer's laptop, you will have a different state of the code. So it's important to know what's going on each of these different environments. And this is what we're going to see tonight. Also, I think that we have to get what is performance and what we are trying to achieve by getting better performance. And I think that for me, performance is about two sides. The first one is quality. Quality means that I think that bad performance is a dysfunction of the code. So if it is a dysfunction, then you can interpret that as a bug. And if it is a bug, you can say that you can have your performance management process in your CI/CD pipeline. But performance is not only about that, it's also a business risk. And this is very important to get as engineers, is that when we write bad performing code, we deploy some risk for the business, because slowness on some pages is an opportunity cost, meaning that for an e-commerce website, for example, it will be cart drop or a conversion rate that drop. It's always difficult to compute that because every business are different, of course. But basically, if you compare the load time to the conversion rate, you'll get a number. And this number for some people, so I found that on the internet, you take that with a dose of salt, of course, but 1 second of load time can mean that there is a $300,000 cost for the business. There is a lot of different analysis on that. Like Google says that if your website takes too much time to load on the mobile, users will drop. So you have to take care of that. And this is why we're here, and this is why you're here. It's because performance is important for everybody. So let's talk about performance in the development lifecycle, because this is what you have to integrate right now if you want your application to perform all the time. And we have this classic performance horror story where this is the tale of two developers. First, there is Alice. Alice catches a performance issue in production. And she code something that is a fix and push it. So the tests are run in the CI pipeline, and the fix is deployed on the staging environment at some point after being merged. Then you have the QA validation process that starts, where humans will test some key parts of the systems, for example. And when the QA validation is done, then the fix is deployed to production. The performance increased, we are all happy, but Bob is here, and Bob wants to refactor Alice's code. And Bob introduced a regression, a performance regression, so we can all go back to 1. This is very important because this means that if you don't integrate performance management in your development lifecycle, you will always have to redo what you have done, and you don't want to do that. Because in this scenario, the economics are very bad. Because you have the initial opportunity cost, right? Then you have the development cost. Then you have the review cost, and then you have the error cost of Bob. You don't want to have that, basically. You want to have software that is quite fast from the start. All right. This is why I'm introducing our product, which is Blackfire, and which we help you to do that. So to run a profile, which are always on demand, you can use our command line client, which you can pass any curl command. Wow. This is the Blackfire effect. Or we also provide Chrome and Firefox extension. So this is basically what we call our companion. And on any page, on any website on where you have installed Blackfire, you can have this profile button over there, which will run a profile. And then you will have something like that, which is the Callgraph and our UX. I will show you better after this. So this is our Callgraph view. Here we have the Callgraph. So the main function calls another one, another one, another one, another one. You have the whole trace. And you can organize this trace with the wall time, or the I/O weight, or the CPU time, the memory, the network usage. Here you have all the HTTP requests that are made during the request. And here you have all the SQL queries. And here you have another linked to a different view, which is the timespan view. There is one thing that is very important with a profiler, is that you have access to every function that are called during a request on your PHP application. When you have this kind of data, you can tag anything you want, such as, okay, let's say that we add a tag to every SQL function, and we can say then, okay, we have 43 calls to SQL function, which accounts for wall time of 80 milliseconds and CPU times of 6.2 milliseconds, blah, 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 okay? So this is quite cool. And here, so this is some kind of flame graph that is inverted. You have the memory consumption over there, and then you have the different layer of your stack trace. What we can do when we have metrics like that, time is not important when you profile, actually. because time is a consequence. And every time you will profile your page, you will have a slightly different number. If you push your code on a different server, you will have a different number. What is important is the cause of that. If you have 43 SQL queries, it will be slower than if you have only one SQL queries. And this is something you have to understand. This is why at Blackfire, we try to push to you what is important, meaning not the time, but what is going on, actually. And this is why you can define yourself assertions when you profile your code. Meaning that, for example, here, you can define that you wanted less than 12 SQL queries, but you got 42. So this is a problem. And these kind of assertions are very important for what's going on afterward, because right now this is just an on-demand profiling, but you will be able to run these assertions all the time, actually. And you can define your own stuff. Like this is a pure Blackfire stuff, meaning that you can have user-defined metrics. And this is where you say, okay, when this function is called this one, this is a metric I want to have, and you will increment this counter. And we can do that. With metrics as well, we can have recommendations. And this is some kind of stuff that we do as well, is that we help you understand what's going on. Meaning that if you have a PHP version that has known security issues and that should be upgraded, we'll tell you that. We tell you as well some best practices for Symfony or for other framework like Magento or Laravel. And yeah, profiling for us is on demand on all environments, meaning dev, staging, production, pull request if you have a platform as a service. It is safe for production because we have absolutely no overhead for non-profiling requests. And we can also do distributed profiling, meaning that if you have microservices in your infrastructure, you just have to profile a page, and we will propagate the profiling to the different controllers in your different servers. This is quite cool. So profiling is a tool to detect and understand performance issues. On top of that, then we can automate profiling for different part of your lifecycle. Because remember, Alice detected a performance issue, but Bob integrated a regression. So you have to detect regression somehow. And this is where we do that. First, at the unit test level, we provide a PHP SDK, which is tightly integrated with PHPUnit. And you can run profiling tests, meaning that you will assert some metrics and evaluate these metrics in your test. And this is what it looks like. So this is a test, okay? And we are going to test a process that gets the current Git version on your computer. This uses the Symfony components process. And as you can see here, Blackfire integrates really nicely with Symfony. And we can say that, okay, when we see that the process is launched, this counter is incremented, all right? And when you want to get the Git version on the computer, you don't have to run 3 times or 4 times the Git process. You run it only 1 time and then it's done. You can cache it and it's okay. So here we test that this multiple calls to the get Git version functions only increment the counter once. So this means that if one day a developer says, okay, no need for a cache, this will fail, your test will fail, and your CI will be red, and this cannot be pushed to production, meaning no regression thanks to your test. But this doesn't account for pull request environment or staging environment or for production environment. So this is why we have another system that monitors continuously with 0 overhead for your users, your staging and production environment, or any environment you have actually. You can create user-defined scenarios, and you can also define your own performance budgets. So who here is familiar with performance budgets? All right, cool. Performance budget is say, okay, I want my request to be under 100 milliseconds, for example. or I want my page to have under 12 SQL queries. You can define then for every step of a scenario that you have to stay below these values. So here we have a really dummy controller. This is a home page, okay. And this home page, we don't know why. It just displays "Hello New York," but we have API call to the application, which sends back the New York name. And this is clearly not efficient for a home page. We will get hammered, hammered, and hammered. So you want to define, your performance scenarios. Here is like the most simple one is like all the page on the websites we have to be rendered in under 100 milliseconds. Okay, you put that in a .blackfire.yaml file at the root of your repository, and then when we profile your page, we will read that file and make assertions based on your performance budgets. And here we can do other stuff like, okay, the home page should not hit the database, but it should not make any requests to any API as well. So when this is defined and when this is run, we display some kinds of results like that, meaning that your build is red. So if your build is red, you don't deploy that because you have a regression or you have something that doesn't work. All right. But this doesn't account for any type of comparison, because sometimes you can have maybe one or two more SQL queries. And we can do profile comparison as well, meaning that on two different builds, the performance shall not increase by more than 10%. Or you should not have more than two more SQL queries, meaning that if at some point you have like 30 SQL queries more in a page, this will be highlighted and your build will fail. So basically, with this rule, with this simple rule here, meaning on all the pages, I don't want any like huge change. You have a simple way to detect performance regression on your application. So our builds, they are scheduled, or you can integrate it, automate it with webhooks. This set a commit status on your GitLab or GitHub repository. And you can create very complex scenarios because we have open source, We have open source our player, meaning that you can use it as well for your own pleasure without using Blackfire. And this player is a very powerful crawler, scrapper, and tester. Tester because you can assert that, for example, your HTTP request sends back a 200 status code. And when you integrate that with your profiling, it means that you integrate profiling data, low-level data, with your integration test. That's quite powerful, actually, because you can mix your own integration tests. For example, here, it's authentication workflow. You can set variables in your scenario. Say, okay, let's visit this /login page. And let's assert that this page doesn't do any SQL query at all because you don't need to do that, all right? Then you submit a form with the defined login and password. You follow any redirection. You want a 200 status code, and you want the page to match the logging, username of the guy. So you have functional test with performance budget at the same time. Okay, so this is how we can integrate performance management in your development lifecycle. On-demand profiling in every environment, meaning tests, staging, your computer, whatever. performance assertions based on code metrics for units and integration tests, performance budgets for scenarios, and all that with zero overhead for your end user, which is pretty cool. So how do we do that? Simply with this kind of stuff. So our probe is a PHP extension. We hook into the PHP engine, all right? We also have an agent that you have to install on your infrastructure, but you don't have to install that on every server. You can have like one dedicated server for the agent. The companion is the browser extension or the command line client. And this is where Blackfire is, all right? The agent is here for post-processing because we anonymize and we remove all sensitive data that the probe sent to the agent, meaning that every SQL arguments are removed, all right? So as a conclusion, dynamic code analysis is essential for quality and business risk management, aka performance. Nobody can say that they have good performance unless they invest in it. And I want to state that it's an investment. It's not a cost because you will earn money for investing in performance. You can start on your lowest percentile. You can start whatever you want, but at some point you have to stop. Like Amazon stops at 98 or 99 percentile because it is too much side effects and too much money to fix these problems. So there is no need to do that. But all the things that you will improve will earn you money. And we have to remember that bad performance is a business risk. It's not an engineering risk, it's a business risk, and this is important. So during development, profiling can help debugging, improve your code, and validate assertions. During testing and staging, you can test assertions, validate, and decide if this feature can has a presence on production or not. And in production, you can use Blackfire to monitor, identify, and understand what's going on, because some stuff only happens in production sometimes. We are closed source, but I want to state that we have also open source tools that are there for the PHP ecosystem and that are very nice. HHProf is the first profiler. PHP Spy is a new project from someone that is very cool. This is not a Callgraph profiler, but it's a statistical profiler. And PHP-SDK as well, which is quite cool. And we are doing a summer discount with a lifetime 20% discount on Blackfire. So if you want to use it, use the summer 19 coupon, sorry. And if you have any question, please ask them. No.
Hello? Yes, that's gonna work.
Yeah, can you profile shell scripts?
Yeah, not shell script, but you can profile command line PHP applications.
What about what do you call them? Workers, endless workers. Like if you have a worker,
Yeah, you can do that actually. With our SDK, you can profile long-running scripts, for example, and you can profile some really tiny parts. Like if you have a special condition that you know is slow, for example, you can start the profiling at this point after the condition, and you can stop it once it's once you want to stop it. So you can just profile a tiny part of your code. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Hi, I would like to know whether or not Blackfire.io has been integrated with any of the CI structures such as Circle CI or Travis CI.
Not really, actually, because the builds are we do the builds ourselves, actually. But you can use the player, the Blackfire player, the open source one, wherever you want, actually. So you can integrate that in your own system if you don't want to have Blackfire.
I'll be back to you.
Hello, thank you. Is there any performance hit, if any, using Blackfire in your PHP application on production? Like we're measuring the production, so are we losing anything by integrating Blackfire?
Let's look at the architecture, okay? Sure. All right. So here, the probe is the PHP extension, all right? The PHP extension is only run while you profile, all right? So while you profile, it's on demand, meaning that you ask for profiling stuff. And this is where we have a small overhead. But the other requests are not impacted at all because this only happens in your PHP process that process your request and not on the other end user request. I'm not sure I'm clear.
When you spoke about profiling on production as well.
Yeah.
So is there a way that you say specific threads on production be profiled versus everybody, all threads being profiled?
I didn't get it, sorry.
Yeah, basically the way it works is that the probe is going to be activated by a special header, a special Blackfire header. So when you click on the profile button or start the Blackfire call, whatever, then it, for instance, if you do a GET request, then it's going to do the GET request plus the Blackfire header, and it's going to be only for that specific process. So never for end users and only for authorized users on Blackfire anyway. No, it's not a cookie, no. No, it really is only.
No, it's only a header, actually.
Oh, it was the same question. More questions? Yeah. There you go.
Congrats by the presentation.
Thanks.
Did you consider have those assertions built in PHPUnit or similar? So instead of making a config file that I do need to understand the annotations and the language, if we have some kind of integration with PHPUnit.
Yeah, you can do that with the SDK. This is what I showed before. Let's see if I can find it quickly. Yeah, here. So here is this is a stripped down code for sure, but this is a PHPUnit test case. And I can show you later if you want, but you can instantiate the Blackfire client here, basically. And for your test, we will run a profile during your test, and we will extract metrics. And in this tiny part here, we can assert on the metrics that are instrumented from your code. You're welcome.
More questions? Oh. There you go.
Could you explain a little bit more about you said you have your own builds and they're separate to CI builds?
Yeah.
Just like, can you just go into a bit more detail about what specifically those builds are and how does it, you said that you can do change tracking between say production and a pull request. How does it know which is a production build, which is a pull request build?
No, we
staging,
cannot
blah, blah,
track
blah.
difference between a pull request and a master build, for example.
Right.
What I said is that you can compare, for example, the two last profile on your production build, for example.
I see.
All right. And for the builds, what happens is that we receive a hook or something like that from you or from your CI system or for like a platform message, for example. All right. And then we say, okay, we have some kind of payload that we can integrate with the URL we have to try. And we will run all the scenarios that are defined in your file on this URL. All right. So what happens is that we launch the profile request from our infrastructure. That is all. Okay. But maybe your question was about the commit status? Okay, sorry, then. When we receive a webhook from Platform SH or Symfony Cloud or Magento Cloud or whatever, this contains a reference to the commit. And then you have to integrate GitHub with Blackfire. We provide some kind of UX for that. And when the build fail or succeed, we send the payload to GitHub, which sets the commit status, like any other CI system. No, always on the same environment.
So actually, there's two parameters that you can use in the webhook, which in the standard webhook, and then we have made it easier if you have a special integration that we natively support. But in the standard webhook, you have two parameters. You have external ID and external parent ID. So basically, what you can use is, for instance, the Git shell one, but you can use whatever reference so that basically you will be saying, okay, my parent ID is going to be like the previous ID or the master ID or the develop or whichever branch, whichever commit, basically. But you have to set that ID yourself or to use one of our integrations. So yes, at the end of the day, it is possible to compare whichever build you want with another one. Could require a bit of work, but that's possible. Yeah, you can. That's it. Basically, you can decide whether you want to compare versus the previous commit or versus the branch that is live in production, for instance. That's possible.
Thank you for the question, answers and the presentation. Is it only PHP, or do you have other SDKs? And
yes, for now. But we are working on other stuff.
Awesome.
What do you want?
I guess for us it would be Ruby mostly, but.
Thank you. More questions? Yep.
Thank you. So assuming you're doing profiling on non-production environments, local, stage, or QA environments, what do you see as the role or the purpose of doing profiling on production, and how does that kind of play in with doing application monitoring?
Well, sometimes you have problems that only appear on production. And this is where you want to, so it depends on what side of the scenario you are in. Right? Because if you don't have any performance management in your daily process, then you will start by profiling production because you basically don't know what happens. But if you start by having performance management integrated, then profiling production will be maybe the last resort, actually.
I would give one example, which is, for instance, cache configuration. If you do profiling on a dev environment, you don't want your caches to be activated, obviously, right? But if you're in production, you're going to be happy to have that one test that's going to tell you, oh, you didn't activate the cache. You should probably do that like right now. That's one of the simple examples, but there's a lot of things that you'll be able to see on production that's going to be necessarily different from development. And that's where, yeah, it has a lot of value.
What Christoph is talking about is that we, from the metrics that we have on your code, we can say, okay, your Magento cache, for example, is not enabled. And then we have recommendations for that. So by having builds on your production systems, like every hour or whatever, you prevent some kind of drift that doesn't happen in your code, but with user clicking on the Magento interface, for example. So this is why it's still important to have some kind of build monitoring on your production system.
You guys mentioned it's only done on demand. So is it happening when you're pushing something when you're pushing code to production?
No, you can schedule build to be like every hour, something like that, on your production system. Yeah.
And it's also possible to integrate that with other tools. So we don't have a native integration with Datadog yet, but that will be one of the ways. You know, you can have Datadog that is monitoring real traffic, and then when they detect something is going wrong, they can just hit our webhook so that you get the profiling at the same time.
All right, thanks.